King Jack 10 8 with a suit, the King High suit. I would have called a raise with this hand. It's pretty decent hand, but it's not, stellar. Top two pair, again, pretty decent. Really only 6-6 is a hand that I should be particularly concerned with. I think, let's see, what do I have? Do I have any gutter stuff? No, I do have backdoor diamonds. I'm going to bet, we'll bet $1.99. Like, grocery store prices or something. Actually, I feel like $1.79 is more like that grocery store price, whereas $1.99 is more of a general. So that's a very curious card insofar as it makes my two pair much weaker. I do pick up a flush draw. The flush draw doesn't really help me against anything I was beating, but it makes me less vulnerable to straight draws. Now I don't even have any pairs, right? I have 3 6s with a king and a jack. So this has gone sideways rather rapidly. And I can try to bluff to try to get like an ace to fold. I don't think anybody has a 6 very often. And do I have a good bluffing card hand? I don't think really, because so that getting that hand to fold would have been nice, and fairly likely that I could do it. So in terms of my hand itself, I don't think it was particularly good for bluffing, but the scenario maybe was one where I should just stab and try to pick up the pot. I think I was overthinking it. Just get like straight draws and such to fold. I think, is that a post? It looks like a post to me. Ace. Okay. So I will overlimp this. This small blind overlimping spot is one that I am not very confident in. I think it's a spot where overlimping makes more sense than overlimping in other positions. But I don't have any real clear guidance on that. The rake is very bad. I have a nut suit, and I think a bunch of my opponents. Let's see what the other person had in that other hand. We did have the ace 2 3 4 for the one player, and the other player had queen 8 7 4. So they had like a gut shot in middle pair. So my opponents are quite loose from what I can tell so far, and that will play into what sorts of ranges I think they have in different scenarios. I do think having, a suited ace, we don't want to play all the suited aces, and the 3 is a fairly poor card. The 7 and the queen don't connect, and the 7 and the 3 barely connect, so if I had it back, I'd probably go ahead and fold this hand. It's fairly bad, and I think I played a little too loose here in this spot pre-flop. There's just not going to be a whole lot of really good flops for me, and I'm going to be out of position, so I don't really like my play there. Moving on, though, we have an open limp, but with a poster in the cutoff, so I will mark it, but I say open limp, low jack with cutoff poster. So it's a little different scenario, right? You might want to be limping there sometimes. Maybe you don't. You probably don't. I'm not actually suggesting it, but there's more dead money in the pot. I mean, maybe that's better just argument for raising. But just because somebody does it in that uncommon situation doesn't mean that they're going to do a lot of open limping. However, this person, I've got my eye on them. All right, very nut-changing card on the turn. All of a sudden, we go from a set of 8s being the nuts to now 6, 7, 6, 3, and 3 ace are all straights already. So and now ace with any card from 2 through 5 and 6 with any card from 2 through 5 also made straights. So, I don't know exactly what they were betting, but they probably had a straight. And with the wheel, I don't think it would be worth calling. This one, ace 10, 9, 4. The 4's not great. I don't think it's terrible. The 10, 9 ace, the 9 basically loses some of it's still got good connective value, actually. It just loses a little. So I think this hand might be a little better than I'm giving it credit for. If it folded to me in the cutoff, I would have played it. We had an open limp though, right? So we will mark that open limp, low jack, and that looks like a friend of the game. They go ahead and pot it here. 6-9 is the nuts. Let's see whether or not they had it. They did. The other player didn't. So the other player check jammed. Okay. Are they gonna? Nope, they're gone. Okay. So I was gonna make a note on them. Double or single suited jacks with a 3-4. 3-4 is somewhat useful, but with a low a hijack opener limper, open limper, hijack open limper. I think this is a little too loose. I'll tag it, and we'll just do a little quick checkup at the end of the session. As always, I'm going to do, my session checkup at the end. Discuss hands that had post-flop spots in a little bit more detail, and just double-check my pre-flop stuff. So my hand would be an interesting bluffing one at this point, right? I have Jack, Jack, and Queen Jack is the nuts. Queen Jack is also the only straight, so I'd be blocking the only straights. That person had a set of nines, which, with a straight on board, could be regarded as a somewhat thin value bet. But, let's see. I think I'm going to fold this without the suited ace. With the suited ace, I would certainly raise it. And we'll just mark that. But the person who got this set of nines also had they had one of the jacks as well. So it was a little less likely for them to run into a straight. So the value bet makes a little more sense. When you're trying to value bet thin, if you can block a lot of the hands that beat you, I think that's very helpful. You also don't want to block the hands that can call you, right? The ones that you're value betting against. Like if they had, let's pop that up. So ace, king, 10, 9 is on board. If they're trying to value bet a set of nines, they don't want ace, 10, 9. They don't want ace, king, 9, 9, rather, right? You don't want to be blocking maybe the two pair cards hands that can call you. They would be blocking the sets, which would be nice. But given the action, if you're in a spot where you're thinking about making a thin value bet with nines, you don't want to be blocking the hands that you're trying to get value from, really. Whereas, a jack or a queen only blocks the hands that beat them. It doesn't really particularly block the hands that they're beating. Although it blocks things like ace, ace, jack 10, ace, king, queen 10, that stuff. All right, so kings and fours against aces and fours. All right, so people are, so far we've been getting kind of like get it in light day so far, right? I mean, that last hand, let's see, they got it in on the turn, right? On the turn, it goes bet, yeah, so the bet, call, raise, and they had those hands, so good to see. You love to see it. Okay, another open limper here. All right, I flopped top pair out of position with backdoor meh flush draw, backdoor straight draw technically, and that's about it. So my two pair cards aren't particularly good. If I spike a jack or a 6, those both make 9-7 a straight. The jack makes it additional straights as well. A 3 would be a pretty decent card, but one of them's a heart, and it still wouldn't beat king 10, king 8. So very, very clear fold here. Here I would have turned kings up, but as I'm pretty sure you can intuitively see, like, that's not a great hand on this board if anybody else has any interest in the pot, which it seems they do, right? This player betting, we've seen that they can get it in fairly light, but it was like bottom two pair. It wasn't nothing, and there wasn't much else going on that board. The fourth card of the suit in PLO makes the flushes less likely as opposed to hold'em. So that person had king 8, so they flopped king 8, and The other one had, it looks like a straight draw, right? So they flopped a straight draw and a pair and turn two pair. So they like to, they're pretty aggro. They like to put chips in the pot. I think we're gonna start making some notes, some kind of judgmental. This looks like a good game kind of notes. That's Queen Jack 10-6 on King 10-8. Two-tone, 5 ways. Limits pot. So that, that's betting an open-ended straight draw with a pair can be good, but when there's a flush draw on board and you have 4 other opponents, it's generally less good, right? Heads up would be a very different situation than 5 ways. My guess is that you're not supposed to bet very many hands at all. That's some resonance to it. So the natural resonance of my wooden chair on my metal water bottle. I don't have a note-taking thing going on right now. Let's pop up something. All right. Just a note for later. Okay, 10-9-7-3. The 3 is a very bad card. I'm going to fold this hand, no matter what the action is to me. Having one suit, if the 3 was an 8 or a 6, I think this would be a hand I can open. Even if it's a 5, maybe I can open it. I'm not so sure, but here it's not. This is not good. The 3 is just a terrible card. So we do have a raise from a very loose player, but they haven't been raising super aggressively, so I would expect them to have a good-ish hand. We have a cold call from a pretty loose player. I would say usually, you don't want to be calling with hands that you wouldn't be raising in a given spot, but I'm not sure that that's going to be the scenario here. I mean, so far this table is fantastic. Everybody's very loose and seems to like to put some money in the pot. Turn, again, this is a very, nut-changing board, right? King, Jack, Jack 8, 8, 7, all just made a straight. So if you don't have a straight, like, your hand's pretty bad. You can maybe have a set to go with. Double-suited pairs are usually good, but deuces and trays are quite poor, and the 3 and the 8 don't even connect. So this is the type of hand that I think might look better to some people than it is. But yeah, on a board where there's 3 different straights possible, you can make an argument that you'd rather have a set than have that bottom straight, because the bottom straight maybe can't improve. Whereas if you have the middle straight, you're blocking the top straight, but you're also blocking the bottom straight. But if you have that like with some kind of draw with spades or whatever the suit was, all right, yeah, it was spades. We have a full pot bet from out of position from this player. What have we seen from this player? They seem to be willing to bet kind of substandard hands, kind of light, into these multi-way, these 5-way spots. So their 5 ways, I wouldn't give them as much credit as I would otherwise. Given that they straight up potted it, I feel like a boat on the flop is not that likely. They had the straight flush draw, which is cool, but isn't doing that well against trips. But, they got there, so good for them. But again, that's a 5-way pot where when somebody leads out right, into 5 ways. You would think that on a paired board, they would have at least trips, if not the boat. The fact that they full potted it also makes me feel like they're trying to just get people to fold. It raises both of my eyebrows. Yeah, that's kind of hard to do. I don't know. Raising an eyebrow is more like, inquisitive. Like, really? So, here we have a raise and a bunch of calls. It seems like a lot of pots are winding up 5 ways. I've only voluntarily put money in the pot once, and I immediately regretted that decision. So I guess I am embracing my inner old man coffee, which is sort of a term for somebody who's old and drinks coffee and plays a lot of really tight poker. I don't know. I think it's a little offensive. It's a little ageist, but it's one of those things that's a stereotype from live poker that, like, there's some element of truth, but it's not universally accurate, of course. Good morning, BuffyBot. Welcome to the stream. Just getting going here. Not really playing a lot of hands myself, but there are many other players who seem very happy to put chips in the pot. So that's good. There should at least be something entertaining for all of us to watch happening at the table. I would expect the button to bet here, like, way too often. When they check, what do they have? Like, when they're so happy to put a lot of chips in the pot, what do they have when they check? That's always, that's an eyebrow raiser as well. The out of position player just, goes ahead and takes it down. Ace 4, 4, 6 are both straights, but I feel like when the in position player checks it back, the batter is just going to win that a lot unless they're, doing some kind of, okay, now when they have the nuts, they're going to play it very, very passively. Sometimes that's a thing. 3-way raised pot now. I would have flopped all 3 pair on a board that has a straight draw, but not a ton of connectivity and no flush draws. So this would be a pretty happy spot to get some chips in. The turn, now my cards match the cards on the board. There's the flush draw. And then the river would have been, kind of unpleasant probably, but not that big a deal, as I probably would have gotten chips in earlier because I was blocking all the sets. And one ended up winning aces. Wow. Between the two of them, they had 4 pairs, and I had 4 pairs. But I could have used any 2 of my cards to beat any 2 of any of their cards. That's kind of fun. Of course, I folded, and this person open limp slow jack. Let's see. What did they do with those aces? Did they just raise them up? Pre-flop, under the gun +1 raised. Yes, that's them. They raised, and then it went call. Yeah, so it's 3 ways to the flop. And then, were they the one who bet? They were. They decided to c-bet that flop, and then they go check. Seems reasonable. Not a whole lot of information to extract from that particular hand. I mean, I'm sure there's things that we could try to infer, but I'm not going to go too deep on it. They did raise ace face, right? That's what we learned. We've seen them raise one time, and they had aces. Doesn't mean they always have aces when they raise. And they had aces and 8s, which is like, pretty good aces. I think, did they have a suit? They did. Aces and 8s plus a suit. All right, so my 10 is now counterfeit. I have 3 6s with a queen and a jack, which isn't going to win. A boat behind me with the pocket 4s. So we see that their limping range is very wide, and we are going to give them a first-class upgrade. Jack 9, 8, 7. Looking at this hand, the structure is not that great, right? It's probably not the type of hand that I want to call a raise with. However, if it folds to me in the small blind, I will open raise it. And if this is the kind of thing where I think if there's limpers, I think I can come along. Whether I would raise them or not, I don't think so. And so, you know, again, it's that awkward, like, well, I'm the small blind. What do I want to, you know, be doing in the small blind against limpers? That's an open-ended question. Maybe I'll small blind versus limpers. What to do? That's a question I need to dig into a little bit more. Maybe search out some more opinions. Now, I could raise, actually, because there's the one limper, and that's it. I'm going to overlimp anyway, and feel still very conflicted about it. So far, I have played 2 hands. They've both been small blind overlimps, and I haven't been totally happy with either. I do feel like this hand is definitely worth playing against one limper who's limping a wide range, and the big blind, actually, I don't have any disrespect for their post-flop game thus far, but I haven't really, pre-flop, also they're the big blind. And I do think that they're more likely to give me a free flop than some others might. Ace, king, deuce, 3, not fantastic, but I have the suited ace, and I think with the ace, king, I think it's playable. On the button, if it folded to me, I was certainly going to raise. But we do have this limper, so I would use more of a cutoff range. However, they're limping so wide, and my opponents are so loose and passive that having a little wider than the cutoff, I think, makes sense. I flop pair top kicker and backdoor nut flush draw, which would be pretty nice, and I might bet here. But I also flop the stone cold nuts with a straight, which, nobody expects the wheel. Or the Spanish Inquisition or something, and let's just get it in, right? If they do have a wheel, yeah, if they have a 6, they're gonna have probably a better redraw than I do. I could have played this a little slower and let them put money in on the turn and then jam. So they had aces and 4s. Yeah, so they were drawing close to dead. So I may have misplayed that, and kind of expected that they were more likely to continue than they were. So let's see. Bet folds. What was it? Ace, queen, jack, 4 on ace, 5-4, rainbow, and small blind versus button rate PFR. So PFR is to differentiate from RFI. I did not raise first in. I was the pre-flop raiser. There was a limper ahead of me, so I wasn't raising first in. I was raising pre-flop. Raising first in is raising pre-flop. They would also be the PFR, but RFI is more specific. It's a subset of PFRs. I find the shorthand is helpful for me when taking notes, and when posting on forums with, oh wow, nuts versus second nuts, quads against queens full of aces. Amongst a group of people who all know the same shorthand. Of course, on the stream, I can't assume that everybody knows all the abbreviations and whatever, and some of them are uniquely my own. But then thus I'll explain them to some extent, a little bit more than I would otherwise. Right, ace, queen, jack with a suit. A flush draw potentially there. So this is a spot where I have 9-10, so I would have a straight, but my straight would only be king high. So anybody who has a 10 and another one of those cards on board would have the higher straight, the ace high straight. So my hand would still be garbage, even though I made a straight. There'd just be nothing to get value from. It would just be very poor. Queen 8-6-4 double suited. This was, I think I looked up like this exact hand yesterday, and I think it was a fold from the button, which I think surprised me. However, here now we flop top pair. We have a flush draw, out of position 4 ways, weak flush draw, weak top pair. This is a check, right? This is a check and a fold to any significant bet. If someone bets $1 I'll probably call it, because I generally tend to treat min bets kind of as if it's a check, and there are turn cards that I can be fairly happy with, right? A 5 would be a pretty decent card, where then a 7 would make me the nuts, and a deuce would make me the nuts, because I do have the 8, so I'd have that sort of gutter. And if I turn 2 pair, I'll be kind of happy. And if I turn a flush and everybody checks, there's a chance I win. So something like a $1 bet that feels like, meh, you know, I think something like that I can call, even out of position, especially against players who are fairly passive. But if anybody were to make a real bet, I would not hesitate to put this hand in the muck. Not a great bluffing hand, as I don't have any 10 in my hand. I would really like to have a 10 to block both straights. I blocked the bad straight with my 8, so that's something. I do have a flush draw to go with it, and top pair, so I don't think betting here would be catastrophically bad or anything. There would be some upside to it, but in general, with multiple straights possible, I think, 4 ways. Also, I do have some showdown value, so like if it were to just check through, and I'm gonna fold now, my flush draws may be a little more likely to be live because the flop checked through. I don't think my queen is very likely to be good, and it's possibly going to cost me a significant amount to get to showdown, as my opponent has potted it, declaring their intention to be aggressive in this pot, saying, they're interested in it. And they just get to win. No contest. Okay, ace, king, deuce, 4. So the deuce 4 is like, those are very bad cards. On the button, maybe. In the cutoff, I think this is just a fold, right? This is a hand that's easy to kind of think is better than it is, I believe. I will mark it because I want to refine that sense of like how to play these ace-king hands, right? I think the deuce 4 is the deal breaker here. Being suited to the ace would be helpful for sure, but maybe not helpful enough. I did play, what was it, ace, king, 3-2. That was suited to the ace, and I was the button, right? So here on small blind, I'm going to have the worst position no matter who enters the pot, right? That hand, I was the button. I was going to have the best position no matter who entered the pot. And if I made the flush, it was going to be the nuts. Here, it might be the second nuts. It would usually be the second nuts. And the second nuts out of position, I think, is even more vulnerable. All right, queen, queen, 8, 4. I've got this, like, barely connected hand. I do have a suit, so I believe this is probably a raise first in from the button. If somebody limps, though, then and there's 2 limpers. All right, so this is the kind of spot where I am tempted to, because of the nature of my opponents, overlimp, where I feel like if I have a queen, I'm going to get paid. And I think there could be an argument made, for sure, for overlimping this hand, as it does have a chance of flopping really big and set over setting someone. And since my opponents are loose and passive, it's more likely to do that. So I can see an argument for overlimping this hand. Raising it, I think, would probably be a little too enthusiastic. But another issue here, though, is that the rake is so high, and so these hands that they feel like, oh well, maybe, yeah. In a low rake game, I think I'd be much more interested in that overlimp in that spot than in a high rake game. And as we said, we're gonna play grumpy today. So the grumpy player folds this hand, and then is happy for completely whiffing the flop and not like folding a potential set over set situation. All right, we've gone about 30 minutes. If anybody has any thing to say about sort of how long of the regular session they like and how long they like the review, the sort of, division this way and that way, let me know. This game is so good, I don't know, I might kind of chill in it and grind a little longer, but we might also pop over to the session review in about 15 minutes. It'll depend on how many new players. We just lost one. But we have, 3 friends from the beginning of the game. I don't expect to see a 3-bet very often, as I have 2 of the aces and my opponent hasn't raised a single hand so far. Jack, Jack, 7. Not a great board for ace, ace. You know, any jack beats me now, right? Just one card in the hand can beat me. 8 of hearts, really atrocious turn card, as all the hearts got there. 9-8 got there. Of course, 8-8, but there's no real reason to believe anybody has that. The 10's just kind of adding insult to injury, where it's like, oh, you thought your aces were bad before. Now a 9 in any of these cards, or with a queen and a 6, I'll make a straight. I think there's a reasonable chance I'm going to win this hand, though. Like, oh, they did turn a boat. Wow. Okay. I don't think I have too much to say about that hand. I want to see what the other person had. The other person had king, 5, 6, 9 of hearts. So they have a straight flush draw on the turn and a flush. So on the turn, my 2 opponents had a flush and a boat. And they just went check, 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 check. Which, you know, hey, cool. I got a showdown with my aces. I wasn't going to put more money in the pot unless, like, a jack came. In which case I actually would have been winning. But, yeah. So one person turned a flush. And maybe if I bet the flop, I win. But given all the potential hands my opponents can have, I don't think that would have been particularly wise. So easy for pre-flop callers to have a jack amongst them, right? There's 2 opponents. So, and then they can also have draws that they can play aggressively. On the one hand, they don't want to play the draws that aggressively because there's a pair of jacks, and they can be drawing dead. On the other hand, I'm going to fold this and explain in a moment. They might get more fold equity with them because there's a pair of jacks, right? They might be able to get those over pairs to fold. I think my hand's pretty decent, right? I've got queen jack 10 connected with the suited 7, the 7 suited to the queen, right? So queen high suit. So pretty decent hand. But I'm going to be out of position multi-way. And, you know, the queen high suit isn't going to play great out of position. And the queen jack 10 is pretty good. The 7 really only adds a little bit of connectivity. On a flop like 8-9, then all of a sudden the 6 makes a straight. And that's about the difference. But, yeah, I don't think I want to be defending this against a hijack raise, but that would be kind of the scenario. I'll tag this though, and we'll just take a quick glance at the pre-flop matrix at the end of the session for that hand. My big blind defense ranges, I think, are definitely at the bottom of sort of expertise and confidence. I would say even 3-betting ranges, I have a little clearer idea of what I want to be doing. Even though my 3-bet pre-flop is very low, and I'm sure there are good opportunities that I'm missing. Having said that, in these games, I think more leaning towards value 3-betting, not a whole lot of 3-bet bluffing, as people just aren't folding that much to 3-bets. I think that's a sense, though. That's not, I don't have hard information on that. Okay, if I was suited to the ace, I would, I believe, play this hand. Having, you know, 7s, that's cool. Like ace, jack, okay, jack 7, jack high suit. A whole bunch of kind of medium things that multi-way out of position are not going to give me a lot of flops that I can play with confidence, right? That I can confidently put money in the pot and either deny equity or get value. So, you know, on this board, I would have the nut blocker, so nobody has the nut flush draw here, and if the flush comes in, nobody has the nut flush. These aren't the players that I'm really getting to try to fold, like the second nut flush or the third nut flush, right? Or the smaller flushes. I think they're the ones that I'm trying to make the nut flush against and then get value from. 2 pair, looks like takes it down. Flops 2 pair. And 10-5-5 deuce. Just because you can multiply the 2 by the 5 or the 2 by the other 5 or add the 2 5s and get 10, that adds no value to this hand, unfortunately. It does make it a little bit of a mathematical marvel, and I appreciate that. and a 2-5 is the same as a 5 times 5, 25. And, you know, I could go on and on. I won't. You're welcome for not going on and on. But, yeah, this hand is more entertaining in just a mathematical sense. But I think it's quite clearly terrible. Of course, if a 3 rolls off, that's not a heart. It would turn the nuts. And, even a nutty squirrel goes twice a day. Yeah. Not a good hand. The 10s, the 5 is just garbage. 10s with a king. If they're suited to the king and the 5 was not garbage, I think this would be an open raise in the cutoff. And if the 5 instead of garbage was like something legit good, then it would be a raise in the hijack, and I would certainly isolate. I'm probably going to play close to my cutoff range against this limper because they're playing 75% of their hands almost. The player behind me is playing 75% of their hands. I want to skew towards hands that are going to flop well multi-way, but I don't need like the top of that range. I don't need the best of the best. I think, my cutoff range is going to be less than 30%. If I have 3 players playing 75% of their hands, getting money in with those hands, I'm going to have good equity. And these aren't players that are necessarily going to make it very difficult to realize that equity, right? So, but things like 10 high flush draws aren't going to add a ton of value to my hand. Unless there's something else that's already... I mean, here I have 10s, but that's about it. All right. This is not very good. Jack 10, 7, 6 single suited, but with 2 extra blockers. If an 8, 9 came, I'd have a double-ended straight flush draw. That would be interesting, right? A queen or a 5 would make me straight flush. That would be fun. I could make 2 straight flushes, and wow, that's hilarious. That's hilarious that I actually called that. I could make 2 straight flushes here and give myself the bad beat jackpot with like a queen of diamonds and a 5 of diamonds. I really kind of hoped that would happen, but it hasn't. Still, my hand would be the nuts, which would be great. And if I were to make a flush on a card like a king of diamonds or a deuce of diamonds, having the extra diamonds in my hand would actually be helpful because it would be a lot harder for someone with an ace of diamonds, king of diamonds, queen of diamonds, whatever, to make a bigger flush because they can't have it with the 6 or the 7 or the jack or the 10. So this would have been a fairly interesting hand to play if I'd actually gotten there to the flop, but I think it was quite poor pre-flop. Double suited, I would have played it in that spot. All right, the button's gonna open limp, and then the small blind's gonna limp, right? Let's say that's probably what's gonna happen. Oh, a raise, spicy. I'm just gonna fold. And my powers of prediction have left me, but this player wants to give a really long hard think to what would the button raise. If they haven't raised a single hand so far, what are they raising? It almost makes me want to play the hand because I feel like this is a special occasion. It's their first raise in the game since I've been here anyway. But it doesn't really make me want to play the hand. So what are they going to raise? Well, aces. Maybe some double-suited, gorgeous, big rundown that maybe hits a jack. I expect they might have pot it here again with aces. I think that would be reasonable. The out-of-position player certainly can have a fair amount of 3x in their range, but they're much more likely to have hit the jack, have some kind of a, some back doors. I think a player like that is going to indulge themselves in. Now they've left. They were so frustrated with the experience. They've just taken their chips and gone home. All right, so we lost another one. Another player, that is. This person's giving a lot of thought. So the weird thing is now the button, somebody actually ended up posting on the button because the other player left, which is super weird. They raise, and if I was double suited, I think I 3-bet this. Maybe. Let's try to remember what I was saying there. Probably 3-bet this if double suited. and we'll see. I would treat that as like a regular button open because it was so odd, because they posted and then they just raised when it the first player, you know, called ahead of them. It's a very odd situation. You're not supposed to post on the button. That's not supposed to be a thing. Not when you're like coming into the game, right? Somebody who's already in the game should get the button, unless it's some kind of weird tournament situation. In which case, still, should you come into the button? And we are going to fold. What are we at? We're at about 45 minutes. I think I will call this the last orbit of this live session, and then we'll proceed to the session review, get our learning on. And yeah, I mean, the game is fantastic, but like, here's a secret: the games are often fantastic, like very often. Don't tell anyone, but there's just a lot of good games, and so we get a lot of spots to, you know, get the chips in good. I think that hand earlier, Ace King Deuce Tray, where I flopped the wheel, maybe I was a little over eager to get the chips in, but you know, I think they potentially could have gotten it in fairly bad. But seeing that they folded Ace 4, I don't know, gives me a little pause, a little second guessing. There were a lot of turn cards. We'll get back to that hand. 6, 7, 8. That make it not the nuts plus board pairing cards. So I don't hate it. So a lot of straight draws on the flop, but no straights yet. Flush draw pot, you know, presents itself on the turn. The flop was a check call, correct? So now this player's deciding whether they want to keep betting. I think they probably should often keep betting here, as if they had something worth betting on the flop, then on the turn, it's often going to be worth continuing with, right? Whether it's a strong draw that maybe they're going to barrel off on, or whether it's... So here they're basically saying that they backdoored spades, or they had some kind of a pair thing. Okay, 4s with a 5 and a 6 double suited. I think this is the only kind of pocket 4s I'm going to play from this position. Except for maybe like 4, 4, 3, 3 double suited, that sort of thing. In a game that's not featuring a lot of 3-bets, I also feel a little bit more confident, more comfortable opening a hand like this that, speak of the devil, we have a 3-bet. Because of the nature of this hand, I think it's the type that we do want to call a 3-bet. Now, we are shorter stacked, so that, I mean, with this opponent, the player behind us is short. They're probably going to jam. That's going to make it 1858, so we're going to basically end up calling 1858, and the other player, who knows what they'll do. It's almost like we just want to put it in. I'm tempted to actually just jam. This player in the small blind is kind of gumming up the works, where if I were to jam and then they call, like, I don't think that's a great spot. So now I'm mostly playing... All right, so now I have a straight draw, and we're going to have to look at the pot odds. What are the pot odds? They're quite good, right? We've got 15, and then basically, you know, 4 or 5 times that. So we're getting fantastic odds on a straight draw, also have a backdoor flush draw. Yes, we have someone behind us we have to worry about. The 8 might beat us. Right, so it's basically jam or call. Jamming maybe is somewhat sensible in terms of getting that player to just be out of the pot. If they do jam here, that's kind of an uncomfortable situation. We're going to be able to realize our flush draw and straight draw equity, and we're going to need to get there, which we don't. So I'm pretty confident I am not going to win this pot, but we will see. Probably, yeah, some bigger pair over there. An 8 on the turn, on the river, wouldn't have been good. But if we look at our pre-flop, all right, and we're just going to fold this and mark that hand for sure. I think mostly pre-flop is what we want to think about. The flop we can talk about, but I'll mark the whole thing. Okay, here we are in the session review. First question is going to be, do I play this hand from the hijack? And I will look at the PLO matrix and just check it out. Double suited 4s with a 5 and a 6 are indeed going to be a raise and a call of a 3-bet. So Um, 4465 is RFI call from hijack. Yeah, period. That's it, right? Not much more to say there. Also, let's say 6-7 or 7-6, 7-5, 5-3, 3-3, 2-2, and all ace X. King 5. So this is basically just, okay, these are the double suited. Oh, no. Okay, so important detail, double suited, right? If it's not double suited, I think it's going to be a fold. I'm not even going to double check that because looking at the matrix, seeing that these are the hands, basically, if I have pocket fours double suited to a 6-5, 7-6, 7-5, 5-3, pair of threes, pair of twos, king 5, or ace anything, that's like a fairly narrow range. But all of those, when I raise, I'm going to call the 3-bet. Most of our 3-bet calls are going to be these double suited hands a lot of the time, right? So I think that's just pretty straightforward there. When this happens, I did have a thought of if I jam and then get the player, the loose player across from me to fold, my equity is going to go up. There's going to be dead money in the pot. I don't really trust this player to fold, though, to a jam. So I think that probably would have been a mistake. Here, I think I only need 25% equity, right? And I think I have well more than that. Of course, there is the issue of potentially folding equity on the flop, which could happen, but I'm going to call a lot of flops where I have a piece, right? The ones where I wouldn't realize the equity would be like hands where they're going to jam the flop that I whiff, and I would have hit a 4, right, on the turn or the river, and so that's equity I won't realize. So I would rather get it all in against this person with $16, but I'm worried that the other person is going to cause issues down the line. So if we just do this and we, I think, show all the hands on the river, right? And we don't see the other player's hand, but let's just look at the equity calculator and see, like on the flop, we'll remove the random hand for now and just say as if this were 3-handed. If we look at the flop, I've got 45% equity almost on the flop, right? I actually have the best equity. I have more equity than the kings on the flop. So I think this was a really clear spot where I could easily get it in. Interestingly, yeah, the kings ended up holding up. So getting the 8s to fold wouldn't have done that much for me because yes, I would have prevented a potential backdoor flush draw that had me covered, but I was already losing to the king high flush draw anyway, so that doesn't help. I would basically prevent turning an 8 and then the board pairing. So they had so little equity, trying to force them out wasn't going to have that much utility against their hand, against their range, who knows, right? But if we look and what do we want to give the other person? I can actually just look it up. I think we can see. I won't bother. Let's give them a hand. Actually, let's not. Let's just go pre-flop and look at how these appear, 3 ways pre-flop. I've got a third equity in this scenario, which is about my fair share, right? 3 ways. It was actually 4 ways. So if we give some other hand like, Queen of Hearts, 10 of Spades, 8 of Diamonds, and 9 of Clubs, something like this that doesn't interact too much with my hand, but, makes it take some of my equity. As you see, I still have like 29% here. So I lost a lot less equity than the kings because the king's equity mostly comes from holding up. My equity comes from getting there. So the amount that I get there and am not good is some of that, right? Some of my equity I lose, but more often the person with the kings is losing some of their equity. So I think this hand was pretty straightforward, and we'll close that, and then we go to these other hands. Okay. Ace 4 King tray. So my assertion was, what was it? If I was double suited, I would 3-bet this. I think that was my main question. So small blind versus button. We'll just ignore the poster for the moment. Small blind versus button. Ace King 4-3 double suited. would in fact, if with good suits, would be a 3-bet. So suited to the ace and the king, right? So we will say here, ace king 4-3 double suited is 3-bet versus small blind versus button RFI. If good suit, fold if suited to the 4. So I think that was my main question here. There was also the question, do I open this hand if it folds to me? And I think the answer is going to be yes. We're going to look at the actual hand, single suited, and that is correct. Ace king 4-3 single suited is small blind RFI. If good suit and call and limp call if bad suit. So theoretically, with the extra spade, we could limp call. I'm not going to be doing any of that at these stakes. I think that's a strategy that you really want to try and integrate that when you're at a much higher level and you're trying to go for these subtleties and the rake is lower. Here I'm just going to go ahead and raise this from the small blind and 3-bet it double suited to the ace and the king against the button. Otherwise, as I did in this hand, I will fold it. Next, queen jack 10-7 with a suit to the queen. This might have been a mistake. This might have been too tight. This is big blind versus cutoff. You know, big blind squeeze versus cutoff, sort of. It's a little different. There's the limper, so maybe I want to be a little tighter. Maybe you could say it should be versus like the MP range, because this player should have a slightly tighter range. But first, let's just see squeeze versus cutoff. That's big blind squeeze versus cutoff. Queen jack single suited. Queen jack 10-7 doesn't make the cut, right? So we will make a note of that. Queen jack 10-7. That's an ace. Queen jack 10-7 single suited is fold versus cutoff RFI and button cold call. Queen jack 10-8 and queen jack 10-9 and queen jack 9-8 single suited are all calls versus in same situation. Right, so in this spot, if I were, if make the 7 an 8 or a 9, call, right? Good to go. Good or bad suit. So whether I'm suited to the queen or whatever, those make a lot of straights. They make a lot of strong straight draws. Different scenario, right? Let's look at the same scenario. What am I? Big blind versus cutoff squeeze, right? And we want to see like double suited. What if this hand were double suited? I was thinking maybe I 3-bet it, maybe I call it. It's close, and it is a call. So we'll say queen jack 10-7 double suited is call in this spot. 3-bet call with queen jack X double suited that would actually basically we'll just say this, queen jack 10X double suited. No, that's not right. Okay, so this is a spot where I'm looking at the matrix and I'm trying to see the visual information and represent it verbally, right? In a way that, I mean, I can look at it and I could actually probably put it all out, right? Queen jack 10-9, queen jack 10-8, queen jack 9-8 are all, those are all 3-bets, and then we call a 4-bet, and queen jack 10 and any other suited card, and queen jack 8-7, I think, and maybe 9-7. 8-7, right? Yeah, and 9-7. Those are calls. But so, you know, I mean, I can see it in my mind, but I'm probably not going to hold that visual image like for eternity. So what I want to do is make some kind of a simplification. So we'll say queen jack 10, queen jack XX double suited that would call single suited will 3-bet, yeah. Okay. So basically Queen Jack 10-9, Queen Jack 10-8, Queen Jack 9-8. So this might be a little bit of overkill, but those ones that we were going to call with here, if they're single suited, if they're double suited, we 3-bet. Also call with Queen Jack 10X double suited and Queen Jack 9-7, Queen Jack 8-7, all double suited. Okay. So those are some kind of guidelines, some ways that I can verbalize parts of the chart so that I think they'll be easier to remember. They'll be easier to remember for multiple reasons. One of those reasons is like they're words that I think are easier to hold on to in some ways than the visual image. The visual image is actually very compelling because it looks like, you know, there's a square here that's yellow, and then it goes like this. I don't know. It's symmetrical. It's a little easier to remember than some visual images, but the words, I think, also putting the words down, engaging with the information that way forms connections, right? It strengthens the neural pathways and whatever. So this was a fold, which was correct, but if we make the 7 and 8 or a 9, we're gonna call, or if we double suit it, we're gonna call. Okay, moving on. Enough of that hand. Queens with a 4 and an 8. So I just want to see what positions am I going to open this. I believe I'm going to open it in the button, and then we're going to check the cutoff and MP. I'll actually check cutoff first, and then we'll go one way or the other depending on what the cutoff says. So we definitely won't have to check all three. I think that makes sense. Single suited queens with an 8 and a 4 is going to be a fold in the cutoff. So queen, queen, 8, 4 single suited is fold in cutoff, in hijack and cutoff, right? I think we can correctly assume that we're not going to play this hand in the cutoff, in the hijack if we're not playing it in the cutoff, and then we'll just look at the button. On the button, queen, queen, single suited with an 8 and a 4. RFI on button and fold to 3-bet. One of few queen, queen, single suited hands that raise fold on button. Okay, so this would be an uncommon hand that if we were on the button and it folded to us, we'd raise and we'd actually fold to a 3-bet. It just barely doesn't make the cut. Whereas most of the other queen, queen with 2 cards suited to a queen, or even any suited to anything, most of them are going to be calling a raise. So here with 2 limpers, again, since you do open this on the button and these limpers are very loose and we're not that likely to get raised behind us, I think we certainly can make the case for overlimping here, and I wouldn't really hate on that play. But I'm kind of pruning that from the game tree, right? And just not going to mess around with that right now. And maybe in lower rake scenarios, so higher stakes, I'd be more likely to do that. Again, this scenario, this lineup, it is a fairly attractive option, and it very well may have been the best, but it very well may not. Okay, so there's a limper and a raise. This, I think I was thinking double suited. Am I going to 3-bet this? And I think the answer is no. I mean, so what do I consider this? This is not a squeeze spot. This would be like 3-betting against the cutoff. This player has barely raised any hands. So I actually, against this player, I think I should almost like consider they have a low jack range, right? And think, what do I want to do against a low jack range? And the answer is like fold with haste. But I can look it up against this spot. First, we'll look small blind versus button just in general and see ace king single suited. 4 deuce is just a fold, right? And actually a lot of ace king single suited is folded here. So that's kind of my takeaway here is ace king 4 deuce single suited is very clear fold from small blind versus button RFI. very few ace king XX single suited are played from small blind versus button RFI. Mostly want a Q and some connectivity. Right, and so I don't need to be too much more specific than that. I'm not gonna, like, if I look at the chart here, it's a messy one, right? So when I look at a messy one, I'm just gonna look at it and kind of go like, okay, the general lesson is ace king in the small blind against a button raise, not that great, single suited. I'm gonna go though and double check double suited, right? So double suited, oh, very different story, right? This particular combo would be a fold. Well, this one, if we make the 4 a heart, this is actually a 3-bet and a call. If we have the bad suit where the 4 and the 2 are suited, then it's a fold. Ace king 4-2 double suited is 3-bet call versus button RFI if good suit. So not suited, not the 2 and the 4 suited. We have an ace high flush draw, king high flush draw. Most ace king double suited is 3-bet call from small blind. So that's the sort of oversimplification I'm going to make. If the 2 side cards are terrible and it's only suited to the side cards, then I'm going to fold it. But otherwise, I'm going to call. I'm going to 3-bet, and then I'm going to call a 4-bet. And there's a few that actually are going to 5-bet, like ace king jack 10, ace king 10 9, ace king 10 8. Those ones are just going to be like, let's go, let's get it in. And like ace king jack 6 with the bad suit and ace king 9 4, those are going to fold. And, you know, those are things I can kind of navigate on my own. And if I make small errors, I don't think those are going to be big errors because it's a very narrow part of, you know, it's a slim branch of the game tree, each combination, right? So I don't think that's something to super worry about. This is a fold, and we move on. Ace king deuce tray. So this one is suited to the ace, and I'm the button, and I think that's really important, and we're going to find out. So we're going to look at the cutoff range first and say ace king single suited, ace king deuce 3 suited to the ace. In fact, any ace king suited to the ace is going to be raised in the cutoff, right? So the only ones we're full. So ace king, double suited, single suited, good suit is all RFI in cutoff, which is what I'm using here for my button ISO range against a cutoff limp. I'm using my cutoff range as a barometer, right? I might make some adjustments this way and that way depending on circumstance. Like here, maybe a little wider, a little closer to my butt off range. Yeah, actually, so sometimes I call it the butt off range, where it's like between the button and the cutoff. So I'd kind of interpolate between those two ranges. And then I get to use the word interpolate. So ace king single suited is RFI in the cutoff. Ace king single suited bad suit is only folded with truly awful side cards. Basically 9 deuce through 3 deuce and 6 3. And so good suit usually calls versus 3-bet. Bad suit usually folds versus 3-bet. And I'll be able to figure out, like, if I have ace king queen jack bad suit, like, I can call the 3-bet, right? If I have 4 Broadway cards or a 10-9 with the ace king. However, if I have like queen 7, ace king queen 7, or ace king, you know, 10-6, like those ones I'm gonna fold to a 3-bet, right? But I'm gonna raise them. So in the cutoff, that's in the cutoff. On the button, it's probably like 100% of ace king single suited. And let's just verify that, right? So button, ace king single suited. What do we have? Yeah, and 100% in the button. So we'll just say ace king single suited is 100% RFI from button. All combos. Okay. So much for punctuation there. All right, we'll double check this thing. Yeah, cool. All right, so we're gonna take a flop, and the flop's gonna be pretty good. So as I said, I kind of slow rolled myself, or reverse faux, I don't know. I have top pair, top kicker, nice. I have backdoor nut flush draw, also nice, and I have the wheel. Super nice. So what's even better than flopping the nuts with some backdoor nut draws? Well, having the opponent make a large bet into you. So here I decided, like, I think they're pretty happy with their hand. Let's just get the money in, right? Let's just get the money in. And they're like, no, that's okay. I only had ace four. So I could make a smaller raise. I could call, or, you know, I could decide this is fine. You know, I don't want to be too results oriented and look at this and say, oh, well, you know, I could have won more if I hadn't done this. It turns out, you know, their only outs were a 4 or an ace, which is only 3 cards because I have one of the aces. And, you know, some runner straight draw like a king and a 10, right? And I have one of the kings. So I have very, very strong equity here. So it's kind of sad to only win this much. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong play, right? Some players will, when they make this large bet, they're just like, yeah, let's go, let's get it in. It's a little odd to make that bet and then just fold. But, you know, if we think about it, like, how many bad turn cards are there? There's the 6, the 7, the 8, the 2, the 3 actually de-nut my hand, and then the ace, the 4, and the 5. So there are a lot of turn cards where we don't have the nuts. That can be okay. We still want to get it in, probably. But, you know, do I want to give them a free look at it? I think not. And if they have a hand like 6-8 and they fold, am I even that broken up about it? Let's launch the equity calculator. Let's see what the equity calculator has to say. Let's give them a specific hand. Let's give them like 5 of hearts, 6 of hearts, 7 of spades, 8 of spades. So they've got a pair, they've got a wrap, and they've got a couple backdoor flush draws. I think they're going to have a lot of equity here, right? A 3, a 6, a 7, and 8, and then some backdoors, 9 and like 12. Yeah, I feel like they're going to have like 40% here, like over 30%. No, oh my goodness, I was way off. They have 52% with a hand like that. Now, am I going to get that hand to fold? Should I actually wait and then have like a card roll off that's safe and then I get it in with 80% equity? You could make that argument. So what I did was I added a jack to the board and assumed that they miss, and then I, you know, get it in on the turn. But let's give them something a little bit less grandiose than let's just take away their backdoor flush draws, and let's see, they were at 51%, now they're at 45%. So now I'm a favorite, right? And what if they don't have a pair? What if they have a 9 of clubs? Doesn't change much, right? Because their runner boat outs weren't, those all made a straight anyway, right? So it didn't matter. Let's say they have, let's give them their actual hand where they have ace of clubs, 4 of spades, they can't have the 4 of spades, and queen of hearts, jack of diamonds. This is an approximation, but they only had 16% equity. So against their actual hand, I do want to get as much in as possible. But let's say that they had like a 6 of diamonds and an 8 of diamonds with this, which is somewhere in the middle, right? Where they have 2 pair, but then they have a gut shot. Now they have 32% equity, and I'm really not broken up at all if they decide to fold. Yet, if they get it in, I'm quite happy. So I think I don't mind my play. I think making flop raises and getting folds is just rarely terrible. This isn't like the board came ace, ace, 4, and I had ace, ace, and I raised it and got folds from them drawing 100% dead, right? This is, I had the nuts, but they were very vulnerable nuts. It's the worst possible 5-card made hand, right? A 5 high straight. Any other, you know, straight, flush, boat that they can make is going to beat that. So I'm not going to beat myself up about this one. Okay, this is a fold. I think this is just a clear fold. Let's just verify it. I am the low jack. There are some alternate, you know, circumstances going on here with the post, but I'm going to, by and large, ignore that. And ace, jack, 10 with the 6. That's interesting. Ace, 10, jack, 5, and ace, 10, ace, jack, 10, 7 we play. So, yeah, we'll make a note that this is a fold. Ace, jack, 10, single suited, bad suit is a fold in low jack, but is close. Ace jack 10 7 and ace jack 10 6 5 are raise folds. I need a 10 in here. There we go. If good suit, raise fold with this hand. Okay, so that's about it. You know, just a checkup, just looking at this saying like, yeah, I think this is a fold, but I think it's close. It was a fold. It was close. So I feel good about that. And we move on to the next hand. I think a bunch of these are going to be kind of just these quick, like, okay, let's just double check. Let's refine that sense a little bit. And then here I have jacks and I folded them. I think this is almost certainly correct. I want to look at the MP range, although I can also consider what the cutoff range is. Single suited jacks with a 4 and a 3. Good suit, yeah, not even close. This is just a super clear fold from... I actually want to look on the button. Do I even play this hand on the button? I do with the good suit. Okay, but barely. So we'll look at the cutoff and look at jacks. And I think, like, coming up, answering the specific question, but then finding some things next to it and saying, like, okay, but how close is it? And the answer is, like, not very close, right? But that's good. That helps us sort of get closer to where we want to end up. Is very clear fold from hijack and cutoff. RFI with good suit from button, but still borderline. And I say still, I won't say still, because the other one wasn't borderline, it was clear. All right, so basically this hand, this is a fold. This is a good fold. I'm happy with the fold. And if I were the button, then I could raise first in. But it would be close, right? Jack, Jack, 4 deuce, or Jack, Jack, 4, 3 suited to the 4 instead of the Jack. Those would be folds. So moving on to the next hand. And some of these, I think we can, you know, get an answer and then see some proximal cases kind of rather quickly. And others, you know, take a little bit more digging. The clearer it is, I think the easier it is to kind of just get some information quickly. So the first thing I want to see is this an RFI? Would I raise this first in the small blind? And I think the answer is certainly going to be yes, but the answer is yes, but barely. And in fact, the extra card, so ace, queen, 7, 3, single suited, is RFI in small blind with good suit, fold with bad suit. RFI slash fold. So RFI slash fold means that I would raise, and then if I got 3-bet, I would fold. And the fact that I have this extra spade maybe swings it a little further. I'm going to look up, let's see, let's look up big blind versus cutoff open, or versus button open. Yeah, because I think those are around the ranges they're going to be playing, and this would also be a fold versus in that scenario, but barely. Would also be fold in big blind versus button RFI, but barely. Most other ace queen XX single suited good suit is defend in big blind versus button. All told, I think this hand is a fold pre-flop in this situation. So I don't like my play. I did limp, and then this happened. I flop, you know, backdoors. We check it around and fold. Not much to say post-flop. Moving on. All right. King, 10, Jack, 8. There's, okay, a limp. What did I even want to look at here? Okay, post-flop. Now we have a post-flop hand. This is going to be the last hand we're going to look at. I'm the big blind. I got a free flop. It's nice getting a free flop. I flop top 2 pair. And, you know, somebody can have bottom set. There's a lot of straight draws possible. But in general, you know, there are going to be good cards. Basically, a king's pretty good. It gives me top pair, top 2 again, right? Top 3 doesn't make a straight. A jack or an 8 are obviously going to be good. A diamond is going to give me the second nut flush draw, and anything, you know, a 2 or a 3 are going to be bricks, and like even a 4 is going to complete 1 straight, but not a lot of straights. So I think there's a reasonable number of good turn cards, and I can also take it down right away. So I think my hand has enough value, not to mention some, some backdoor equity, that I think putting a bet out here is fine. And then the turn's a 6 of diamonds, which isn't great in that anybody who had a 6 just pulled ahead, but I do pick up the backdoor flush draw, right? So that's nice. Check, check. I don't see a lot of value in betting this turn, and I guess I can bet to deny equity to the straight draws and just be like, hey, if you have a straight draw, just get out, scooch, right? Get out of here, vamoose. But I don't know. These players, like, they can have 6s, so I kind of prefer just to check. But I think there's some merit to there's certainly merit to considering a bet here. Easily I could have had a different 2 pair and made a boat. I could have flopped a set and made a boat. I could have had a 6 with straight draw and made trips and have outs to a boat. And so yeah, when the river comes a 6 and there's a check, like, I have nothing now, right? My jack and my 8 don't play anymore. I have 3 6s with a king and a jack. That's not a very good hand. So just putting a tiny bet out here to kind of just like get ace high to fold, or like pocket 3s or 4s to fold, I think has some merit. And it's hard though for me to sell the story that like I have anything at this point. I could have a pocket pair and have just checked it in the big blind. That's believable, but it doesn't kind of go that well with the story of wanting to bet this flop. I could have turned a boat and then decided, okay, I'm going to check it and see if somebody else can maybe make a straight. So I think betting like small on the smaller side here makes some sense. Just be like, hey, if you only have like ace high or a pair of 5s or something, just fold. But I gave up, and this player did have ace 4 high, which is fairly brutal. They had my flush draw covered, so, nice that a diamond didn't come in. But I let them win the pot. I probably could have stopped them from winning the pot. Who knows, though? Maybe they would have called. Who knows? Yeah, I think a bet here on the river is worth considering. So bet on the river, worth considering. Bet on the turn, kind of worth considering. I think the bet on the flop was fine. And that will do it for today's session. So I am going to stop streaming. Thanks again so much for watching, sticking with it through the stream. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions about the hands, just go ahead and say that in the comments. And just put a timestamp of when the hand is, and then I can find it a little more easily. All right. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the day that it is when you are watching this. Cheers.